Let's take a curious, neutral, almost scientific attitude to the problem. First, what is laziness? Laziness can be defined as the conscious unwillingness to put in the necessary effort required for a task, encompassing both mental and physical exertion. People are often lazy, even though they know that being so will create problems for them, whether that's more work to do later, missed opportunities, or negative feelings. There's no fixed psychological definition of laziness, although it has been associated with lower measures on one of the big five personality traits, conscientiousness. Perhaps that's because what we call laziness is actually a cluster of behaviors, beliefs, attitudes, habits, and emotions. Laziness often overlaps with, but is distinct from, procrastination, lack of motivation, depression, lack of self-control, inability to resist distractions, certain attitudes to both the goal and the effort required, faulty self-concept. Furthermore, laziness is not just a result of these many complicated variables, it also acts as a trigger for secondary behaviors, thoughts, and feelings. We might feel ashamed or criticize ourselves or take our behavior as confirming evidence that we are a hopeless case, because there is something intrinsic in our nature that makes us lazy. If you've been battling laziness for a long time, it can feel counterintuitive to face these feelings and examine them more closely, but doing so is the only way to really understand what is happening. Avoiding these uncomfortable truths about the way we think and feel currently tends to block us from deeper insight into the problem and finding a way to transform ourselves once and for all. Your laziness, for lack of a better word, is unique to you, and that means that the way you get better will also be unique to you. Luckily, all you need to find this unique situation is an open mind, a little curiosity, and the willingness to have some self-compassion. Later in the book, we will absolutely explore different methods for cultivating good habits, discipline, and mental fortitude, but the first step to doing all that is to be okay with who and where we are right now without shame and avoidance. As you read through the following types of laziness, they are more like underlying causes of laziness. See if you can recognize yourself in any of them. You may relate to more than one. Confusion. I don't know what to do. You know that you should do something, but you don't know what that should be. Let's say you're in the process of building a new business, but you've never done it before. You have some unclear ideas about building a website, so you put some vague item on your to-do list called website. But what does that even mean? You sit down to work, but you're aimless and unsure. You end up feeling more and more anxious, perhaps even feeling stupid or incompetent, and you just end up avoiding the task or giving up. You're not lazy. You're confused. You don't know what is expected of you or what the next step is. This may overlap with a question of poor planning and organization, as well as a lack of clarity about your specific role. Quick solution? Take a step back and acknowledge the lack of clarity. Take time to reflect and gather the necessary information. Get comfortable with the fact that you will first need to ask questions to dispel the confusion. Only then can you start acting. In this example, you could arrange a meeting with a business coach to help you clarify your goals and overall strategy. Then, you get to work outlining a plan of action so you're not as bewildered anymore. Fear. I can't do it. Fear can paralyze you. Fear, in this context, is a reaction to what we expect to happen once we take action. We avoid setting up our website, for example, because we're afraid that it will look awful, that people won't visit it, that we'll do it wrong, that we or others will discover that we are actually big old frauds. The thing about this kind of fear is that it is not based in reality, i.e., in the here and now, but in fantasy, i.e., the future, or at least what we are imagining the future to be. In its own strange way, Neurotic fear is trying to protect you from an outcome that you have decided is undesirable. Many people can't act because they're trying to avoid a perceived negative outcome, but occasionally you may be trying to avoid a perceived positive outcome. Maybe achieving your goal would force you to reconsider your self-concept as a person who's always a failure. Success can be scary. Allowing procrastination to keep us stunted may not feel great, but it does have a certain comfortable predictability about it. Quick solution? Don't avoid the fear, embrace it. Look at it square on and decide that it can be whatever it wants to be, but that it will never be a reason to not act. In other words, separate action from how you feel. You can always act, regardless of how you feel. Being scared is not dangerous, and there's no need for it to stop you from doing anything. We'll look at this in much more depth later, but for now, a great way to reduce the power you give to fear is to take actions, but keep them small. Take a baby step. Then, when you're done, take another, but only focus on the baby step just in front of you, nothing else. Prove to yourself that you can be scared and act anyway. This builds confidence and usually shows you just how unfounded the fears actually were. Fixed mindset. I can't fail. Closely related to the fear of failure is the fear of making mistakes or looking stupid to others. You might unconsciously feel like you can't act because you'll look a bit stupid at first, and being lazy spares you the embarrassment. For example, someone might have a dream to write a novel and believe they have the talent and intelligence to do so, but when they produce a few chapters, they realize that they are very much an awkward beginner and not already a fully fledged author after their first attempt. Their next step might be to share their first draft and ask for feedback, but this is embarrassing. Instead, they give up on the idea completely. For the rest of their lives, they may say, I have a novel in me. One day I'll write it, when I have the time. But the limiting factor is not time. That's an excuse. The real factor is that they are unwilling to endure the learning process that becoming a good writer entails. This is called a fixed mindset, the belief that talent and intelligence are inborn and unchanging. In other words, you're either a good writer or you're not. The consequence of this mindset is that when you encounter any evidence that you're not a good writer, you give up. You have disregarded the possibility of learning. A growth mindset, on the other hand, sees talents and skills as things you develop. Being a beginner who makes mistakes, then, is not an impediment to achievement, but the actual path you take to achievement. Quick solution? Stop telling yourself that you can't fail or refuse to fail. Stop telling yourself that you're brilliant and smart. That's not motivational, it's fragile thinking. Rather, tell yourself that failure is just a necessary part of becoming better. In fact, reframe failure as learning and challenge as opportunity. Expect to not know how to do things. Detach from your ego in the process. In our example, if you notice your first chapter sucks, get professional feedback and take it without thinking that it means anything about your worth as a person. Fatigue. I'm too exhausted. I don't have the energy to do it. Let's first just say that, of course, it's possible to be too tired to act. We are human beings with human limits on our energetic resources. Rest is necessary. That said, a big portion of our perception of lethargy is purely psychological. We have different ways of noticing and interpreting neural signals of mental or physical tiredness. We cannot change hard physiological limits, but we can change the meanings we ascribe to our changing energy levels. Let's say you have to read and summarize a chapter of a textbook one morning, but you're tired. You tell yourself, I'm so sleepy, I can't do it. And so you don't. But this is a disempowering and passive way of looking at things. A more proactive and empowered approach would be to accept that you will occasionally feel tired, to embrace it, and to work with it. Doing so allows you to acknowledge the fact that you're not tired for some random, mysterious reason. You've been going to bed past midnight for a week. Quick solution? What is your fatigue telling you? Allow that to guide conscious action. If your lifestyle needs tightening up, then do that. Eat better. Sleep. Take more breaks. Take a moment to reappraise any expectations of yourself. Are they realistic? Finally, you might actually not be tired at all, but rather avoidant, fearful, etc. Take a look at this feeling of fatigue and get curious about what it is telling you. If you're genuinely shattered and can't manage a full chapter, that's fine. Accept that you're tired. Do half a chapter. Try again tomorrow. Apathy. I couldn't care less. It doesn't even matter. Apathy is actually a mask. Underneath that mask of passivity is aggression, anger, hostility, defiance, and resentment. Do not ignore this feeling, since it can point to a real lack of alignment with your goals, or even to the fact that your goals are not the right ones for you. The defiance hidden in apathy is often nothing more than old warnings that have gone unheeded and boundaries that have been repeatedly violated by yourself or others. Apathy can be a sign of depression, but in this context, it's better understood as one of its causes. Imagine the example of someone who's been encouraged to pursue an elite athletic career from childhood. They eventually may start hating the sport, not because they're not good at it or can't do it, but because it's not truly their motivation to do it. It's a motivation that belongs to other people. Quick-ish solution? Reevaluate your principles and values. Go back to the drawing board to check that this current goal is in alignment with those. You may have lost excitement for the goal just because you've lost touch with the vision and purpose that inspired it in the first place. But it also may be that you're angry because you don't actually want the goal. And when you say, I don't care, it's because, well, you don't. What do you care about? Get curious about that goal. Self-belief. I'm just a lazy person. I've always been like that. Are you constantly telling yourself and others that you lack patience, discipline, or motivation? When a fixed mindset really beds in, it becomes a permanent part of your identity. To say that underachieving is who you are is just about the most self-limiting thing you can do. This is because you have then defined any action, growth, or improvement as an existential threat, as literally something that will change who you are. Quick solution? Don't overly identify with fleeting thoughts or emotions. Mindfulness meditation can help here. If you feel lazy one day, that doesn't mean you're a lazy person and that this one day defines you as a human being. Accept that you can be many different ways, but that this doesn't necessarily say anything about you, and it especially doesn't control what action you can take. That means that just because you've had a few lazy days, it doesn't mean that you are doomed by fate to wake up today and be lazy again. You can always choose. You never need to create a character for yourself and limit yourself to only behaving as you think that character should behave. Loss of heart. Everything's such a mess right now. It doesn't matter if I do it or not. This kind of laziness is less about fixed mindset and lack of self-belief and more about discouragement and loss of hope. Feeling like a bit of a victim can seriously undermine your motivation to act. You've lost belief that your actions can have a reasonable effect on the world, so why bother? Quick solution? Well, for this one, there is no quick solution, but it will help to forcefully drop the poor me attitude. Make the Serenity prayer your new mantra. Actually, just tattoo it on your chest so you never ever forget it. grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Loss of heart can arise when we have allowed our attention to remain too long on the things we actually cannot control. The way out is to teach yourself to focus on what can be fixed and to gracefully accept what was never in your zone of control in the first place. Comfort orientation. I'll do it after I do this other fun thing. The previous 7 types of laziness are, in fact, not laziness at all. But this final one is. It's simply the tendency to prefer comfort and convenience over exertion and effort. That's it. Pure laziness. And we're all capable of it. It's not a serious mental health diagnosis or a major existential problem to solve. This is the kind of laziness that arises because, on some level, you've decided that watching entertaining videos on YouTube is more fun than making the week's budget, so that's what you'll do. It's the valuing of comfort and ease over even the smallest exertion or inconvenience. Quick solution? Stop doing that. There's no big psychoanalytic theory you need to understand about human nature. There's no major trauma in your childhood to unpack. This form of laziness is just laziness, and the only solution is necessarily one that will be a bit inconvenient and uncomfortable. If you're lucky, this will be the only form of laziness you have to face in your life. It's lucky because the solution is really simple. Activate your willpower, take action, and be disciplined. Not easy, no, but simple. Before we move on, pause for a moment and see if you can identify which forms of laziness are most evident in your own life. It's likely to be a mix. It's also important to separate out the underlying psychological causes for your behavior from simple comfort orientation, i.e., really just being lazy. This is because the approaches for each are different and mutually exclusive. If you're not sure, turn into your own radio station for a few days, i.e., listening to yourself talk, and notice what reasons or excuses you give for not acting. Also, notice the primary emotions you feel, as these can hint at the type of laziness you're experiencing. This has been How to Do Things You Hate, Self-Discipline to Suffer Less, Embrace the Suck, and Achieve Anything. Written by Peter Hollins, narrated by Russell Newton. Copyright 2023 by Peter Hollins. Production copyright by Peter Hollins.